Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Pastor Darrell from the Quest in Galesburg, Illinois. Excuse me, so glad to have you with us today. I'm going to give this a shot. We're having a lot of internet issues up here. Weather's been horrible, and the internet has cut in and out the last 2 days, so we'll try it and see what happens. I wanted to talk to you today about God's correction, just for a couple of minutes. Proverbs Chapter 3, verse 12 says, "For whom the Lord loves, he corrects, just as a father the son in whom he delights." This kind of brought to mind some things in my own life, and I'm sure every parent can relate to this. First of all, let me just say, correction does not necessarily mean punishment, although there may be an element of punishment in such a correction. Let me go back many, many years ago when my son was just a small child, a toddler. Like every parent, you can relate to this. He would, he was learning, experimenting, checking different things out, and he would come into the kitchen all the time, and he would reach up and touch the stove, and whether the stove was on or whether the stove was off, my wife or I, one would always tell him no, and we would take his hand and gently smack it, telling him no, and he didn't like that at all. And that went on again and again and again until one day, it happened. He came in the kitchen while my wife's back was turned. He reached up on top of the stove, and thankfully it wasn't a gas stove, it was electric, so he didn't get hurt bad, but he understood for the first time meaning of hot. Every time we corrected him, we always told him, no, hot. And you know what? After he got burned a little bit, he quickly learned the meaning of the word hot, and it's one of the first words he learned. And he would walk around, he'd point at the stove, and he'd say, hot, hot. He understood what hot meant. And but here's the great thing about it. We never had to smack his hand again. We never had to tell him again. He understood why we were smacking his hand, that the stove was hot and he could get hurt. Well, we're going through the same thing now with his daughter. Lydia, my grandbaby, like all grandparents, we like to spoil her rotten. We do that. But she needs to know the meaning of the word no. Her other grandfather and I were talking about it, kind of laughing yesterday, because when we will tell Lydia no, she will get this real sullen look, and her bottom lip puffs all out, and she'll even cry, trying to sway our mind. But I will teach her again and again, no. And my wife snatched her up yesterday while we were watching her because she cried, and I said, don't do that, because she won't learn the meaning of the word no. Well, it's the same thing with God's children. God tells us no. God corrects us. He's not trying to punish us. He's not trying to withhold things from us. He's trying to protect us. And we need to understand and to get a hold of the idea that when God says no, or when God blocks something from us, He's not trying to withhold from us. He's trying to protect us. He knows good and well that if we go down a certain path, it's going to mean harm. We're going to get burnt. We need to understand that when we keep pursuing and keep pushing, we might get burned along the way. But if we just learn to listen when God says no, it's amazing to me. As pastor, I can tell you over the years, I can't begin to actually number how many times people have said, would you pray this? And I'm like, haven't we prayed this before? Because people want to tell God what's best for them. One of the biggest ones I've seen over and over and over with single people praying or asking me to pray that God would send them a mate. I said, maybe there's a reason God hasn't sent you a mate right now. Maybe that would lead you astray. Maybe that would cause you to lose something in your relationship with Him. And God's trying to mature you in your walk with Him first. Because if you don't, you're going to end up astray. I've seen it again and again and again. And that's just one area. It could be in the area of finance. It could be in a job. It could be where you live. It could be any number of things that God is trying to correct us and to teach us something. He's telling us no. He's maybe even smacked our hand a few times, and we're not learning a lesson. So many Christians have yet to learn that God's correction is not so much punishment, although there can be punishment there if we keep disobeying. But it is, in fact, correction means love. I love Lydia enough to teach her no. I loved Daniel enough to teach him no. God loves you enough that He's teaching you, no, you can't have that. Not right now, anyway. Understand His correction, His discipline is because He loves you. God bless you. You come back and see me again at the Quest.